everybody, welcome back to another episode of Between Two Flags. I am your host, Mike Nash, the Executive Director of Impact a Hero, and we are here at the Impact a Hero Post-Traumatic Growth Library in Houston, Texas. I'm here with my friend, Jack Goodroe. Jack, thank you so much for being here. Really glad to have you.
Mike, thanks for having me.
Jack is a Marine Corps veteran. You have 2 deployments to Iraq, and in Jack's second deployment, he was critically wounded. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And that was, 15 years ago this year?
15 years ago, April 4th.
April 4th.
4404.
4404. That makes it pretty easy to remember.
Lucky numbers.
Yeah, so this is your 15th, we'll call it a live day. For those of you that aren't familiar, live days are like second birthdays for people who have been wounded in combat, and we like to celebrate those. So that's a big one coming up. You got any big plans for your 15th Alive Day?
No, not really. I tend to not just go overboard. I just enjoy it with family and friends. And
okay, well, that's good. Well, I want to talk a little bit about your deployment and mostly, though, life afterwards. As you know, and help everybody else understand, here at Impact a Hero, we like to help veterans and really anybody overcome their struggles with post-traumatic stress by teaching them post-traumatic growth. So post-traumatic growth is this idea that our challenges and our struggles in life are just opportunities. They're opportunities for us to overcome those struggles by becoming an even better version of ourselves. And in many ways, Jack, you are a shining example of post-traumatic growth. So let's start there with your even joining the Corps. So I know where a lot of people maybe join right out of high school or a little bit, pretty quickly thereafter. You were in your mid to late 20s or something when you joined?
About 26.
So tell me about why you joined the Corps and why you did when you did.
So I joined the Marine Corps. I was actually going into I had decided to go into the reserves, and I had always wanted to serve the country. And at that point in time in my life, I decided, I think I'll go the reserve route and, not fully commit, but still serve the country. And this was, before September 11th. I had some very traumatic events in my life happen at that point in time where I thought that it was a loss of a girlfriend, and so I decided, you know what, I need a change of pace. Mm-hmm. I'll just go active duty. So I went to the Marine Corps recruiter and said, hey, I think I would like to go active duty instead of reserves, and so we switched it up and I went active duty.
What year was this?
That was, oh my goodness. What year was it? 2000 and early 2001, 2001.
Okay, all right. So I wasn't far off.
Horrible dates, so dates and years.
Okay, so whenever your first deployment was this at the very beginning of the war in Iraq, or what was going on there? When did you take off?
Yeah, so my first deployment, like I said, I joined December 2001 is when I went through boot camp.
Gotcha.
And then by the time I went through all my schools, my classes, I went to my unit. I joined my unit in 2002, and then we deployed for the invasion in 2003, the invasion of Iraq. And so that was my first deployment.
Yeah. And what did you do in the Marine Corps? Were you an infantryman, or did you have another job?
Yeah, I was Marine Corps infantry, so that was my job, to fight and take it to the bad guy.
Take it to the bad guy. All right. Well, how did that first deployment go?
The first deployment was not bad. It was not near as active as the second deployment. It was, we saw our fair share of interesting things, and we got to do our job. But it was really when we pulled out. We did the push from Kuwait, and we went all the way up to Baghdad. We stayed in Baghdad for a little bit, and then we pulled out. Uh-huh. And we started doing security and stabilization operations in a town called Karbala, which is the second holiest city in Iraq. There's 2 very big mosques. And we actually did a Desert 96, which in the military is, you get 96 hours off for vacations. We hung out in the desert and took a little break before we went into Karbala, and allowed Iraq to have the Ramadan for the first time in, I think, 30 some odd years. Mm. And because Karbala was such a holy city, that was a very big thing for them to get to actually celebrate since they hadn't been able to do it and since Saddam had been in power. And that actually helped a lot with U.S.-Iraqi relations between the military and the civilians that we actually ended up working with.
So this idea of trying to win the hearts and minds, that was a great effort to
win the hearts and minds.
That's good.
We stayed out of the city. We had no interference or involvement with them and let them, do their religious ceremonies and
that's a cool deal.
So it was pretty interesting.
All right. So you wrap up your first deployment, and then it's time to go back. How much time did you have between deployments?
I think about 3 months.
Come on, what, really?
Yeah, we came back in December, just in time, I think, for Christmas. Like I said, I'm horrible with dates and time. So came back, went home, visited family, friends, and then went back, geared up, and got ready for second deployment. And then we deployed end of February, beginning of March, sometime in that time frame. So it was about 3 months, sometime in that.
Okay, so you've already let us know that your second deployment was a little more intense, and ultimately culminating with some significant injuries. Tell us, how long were you into this next deployment, and what happened to you?
So, second deployment, we deployed to the tip of the Sunni Triangle. If you remember back in the early 2003-04, the Sunni Triangle basically culminated from a point at the Syrian border. It went up to Baghdad and then down, and I don't remember where the bottom tip of that Sunni Triangle was, but we deployed to a town called Husayba, and Husayba is literally a border town on the Syrian border. Our FOB, which is a forward operating base, was on the no man's land on the border to Syria. I've always joked that I've been as close to Syria as you can possibly go without going into Syria. I walked up and had a picture with a Syrian border guard, and I was on one side of the gate and he was on the other side of the gate, but I never crossed into Syria. But so that was the area that we operated in, and it was a very hostile area.
Yeah. All right. Well, take us through the battle that ended up with you leaving not the same way you came in.
So what wasn't really so much of a battle as a very long patrol on this one. We started getting hit a lot with IEDs. In 2003, we had VBIEDs, which is a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device. We dealt with those a little bit, but in 2004 and in that time frame, they started setting improvised explosive devices on roadsides and burying them, hiding them in animal carcasses, hiding them in different things like that.
This is early on enough that we don't even have the fully up-armored, vehicles as the standard, and we certainly didn't have the vehicles that were designed. Those didn't even exist back then.
And not to mention that I was on foot and not in a vehicle at all.
Okay,
so
I guess that's
so that was very light-skinned armor.
Okay.
So we were going out on patrol in Husayba, and the town population, I would say 30 to 40,000. I don't know. I mean, it was a good-sized town, and so the way we patrolled is we would set our objectives of what we wanted to do, but as far as our patrol routes, we would stagger them. And so we would go 3 blocks down, hang a right, go 2 blocks down, go up 1 more, up 3, and just
trying to keep it
unpredictable, because you don't want the enemy to learn your patterns and your routines. And so we got tasked with going out and do crater analysis on an IED that had hit the patrol before us.
Okay.
And so with that, you go out and you try to collect as much evidence, because the IEDs are new. You're trying to figure out how they're building them, what they're using to detonate them, if they're pressure, remote detonated, whatever. So it's kind of we don't do the intelligence. We just grab the information or grab the stuff and, bring it back so somebody can decipher this stuff.
There's a great opportunity for me to talk about a Marine Corps Army joke here.
Yes.
But go out there and get the information for us, and we'll figure it out for us.
We'll send the smart people out that don't go looking for this stuff.
Yeah, we actually did a lot of that where I was. We have this phrase that our audience might not be familiar with, but we call it getting left of the boom. Mm-hmm. So on a timeline, the boom is right here. You want to get left of the boom, but so basically before it happens. But you have to, the things after the boom, you learn all you can by that crater analysis, by getting the materials, and if you can find the person who dug the hole, before it was implanted, now you're getting left of the boom. Well, before somebody digs a hole, somebody has to, deliver it. Before somebody delivers it, somebody has to build it. Before somebody builds it, somebody has to fund it. Yep. So that's the idea of this counter IED system, is getting left of the boom. So you were at the beginning of this entire process collecting data so that the smart people can help everyone get left of the boom and save lives. So very cool.
So I was right at the boom.
Mm-hmm.
So we go out, we do crater analysis, and we finish our patrol. We're out, we're heading back to our fob. I would guess this was probably about an 8-hour foot patrol. We're looking at other things, we're gathering other intel as we're going out, coming back in. Obviously showing our presence. And one thing that we did was we interacted with the local populace so that it wasn't a fearful. We were trying to, like you said earlier, hearts and minds. We would play with the kids. We would meet the people, and honestly, the kids are really how we set a lot of our patrol routes. Because if a kid's out in the middle of an alley playing, it's a safe alley to go down. If the alley's a ghost town, you might want to steer clear of that one and find one a little further down. And so we were coming back, and there's a market street that runs right down the middle of Huseba. Well, not the middle, it's the northern end of Huseba. And on the northern end of that, there's other little alleys and things. And so we had crossed over Market, and we were patrolling the northern side. We had gone out on the southern side, and we were coming back on the northern side. And there's a school with a big cinder block, and walls are around everything there. So the school had a big, tall cinder block wall, and it's Market Street. So there's produce and all these things set up for all these vendors. And we were about to come back onto Market Street, probably 100 yards from our fob, before, and I was probably about halfway down this alley, and I was talking with one of our other squad leaders, and I was point on the patrol, and we were talking about a course correction or something that we were going to do, and they saw two of us. He was on my left side, and so they figured, we're dispersed. We've got full dispersion. Everybody's spread apart, staggered columns, which is what you do to minimize casualties. Right. So they figure, we got a 2-for-1. So they remote detonated the IED. It hit me. I had my impact vest, my Kevlar. That was all the armor I had on, but I was close enough to the blast and the cone. It literally hit me from my feet all the way. I had shrapnel from my feet to my head. Now where my flak and everything was at stopped a lot of the shrapnel, but the angle that it was coming in, it actually hit me on my right hip, came up under my flak, lacerated my liver, punctured my lung, severed my thumb, severed the nerve in my right thumb, actually shattered my pistol grip on my M16, tore up. I had a EOTech scope or holographic sight on which was one of my personal ones, and it cut the panels off the back of that. So most of my injuries were internal, other than when I was walking, I was mid-stride, so it hit the outside of my right leg and the inside of my left leg.
Okay.
So my left leg, I got shrapnel messed up the nerve in my left leg, so it's hypersensitive, and then I have no sensitivity in my right hand.
Okay.
And then, so when the corpsmen were treating me, or the first corpsman was treating me, he didn't see a lot of blood, other than, the puncture wounds on my legs, stuff that's not life-threatening, So basically when I got hit, I stood there for a second, I sat back, and then just kind of my strength and I just kind of fell back on the street. I was alert the whole time. I never lost consciousness. They ended up hitting me with a syringe of morphine. So I started cracking jokes.
Oh,
oh yeah.
You're bleeding internally, but you got some jokes.
And so they called for a CASEVAC. So
casualty evacuation.
A casualty evacuation. So they bring in a Humvee to come pick me up, which we're right outside the fob. So it's a short,
thankfully,
short drive to pick me up, because I've been on patrols where you're all the way on the other side of town. You're in the middle of like this little obscure alley somewhere in the middle of town, and you take a casualty and you're trying to walk them in, and you're sitting there shooting a loom, you're shooting smoke, you're popping everything you can, and it's
thankfully you're right by the gate.
And it's daylight, so I'm right by the gate, or just outside of it. So they pull up, and I remember one of my best friends, Justin Proviance. Everybody in the military goes by last names. Goodroe this, Proviance, Nash, whatever. It's not Mike or Jack or So Justin jumps out of the ambulance and he's like, "Beep, Jack, what the hell did you do?" And so I start laughing. I'm like, "I didn't do shit, Doc. I didn't do shit, Justin." And he's like, so we're sitting there talking, and so they get me stabilized and packaged and load me in the ambulance, and so they take me to our one of our medevac helicopter LZs over by our fob. And I remember by that time I'm laying there, I've got my eyes shut, and I'm in the back of the Humvee waiting for the Black Hawk to come in and pick me up. And I'm listening to everybody talking, and I hear my company gunny, I hear my company CO, the XO, my lieutenant, one of our staff sergeants, and I'm laying there, and I had my eyes shut, and I'm on morphine, so I'm cracking jokes, and I'm not in my right mind. And I was like, "Gunny Vay, is that you?" And he goes, "Yeah, Goodroe, I'm here." And so they kind of go around, and they say, Captain Gannon, Captain Neal, and so I was like, wow, it's nice to see my fan club showed up. So, just kind of joking with everybody. But from then, they flew me out to Al-Qaim, which was our battalion AO, where our battalion was stationed. They had a advanced trauma team that further stabilized me. Then they flew me on another Black Hawk from there to Baghdad, where I had my first surgery, which was exploratory surgery. So they split me from my sternum basically as far down as you can cut.
Yeah.
And went in, I had a grade 3 liver laceration, I had a punctured lung, I had some just internal injuries from the shrapnel and everything. So they went in and stopped all of my internal bleeding, got me stabilized, and then from there they medevaced me out to Germany. They flew me from Baghdad to another air base, and then flew me from there to Germany. So that was pretty much my first deployment and the beginning of all my medical stuff.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot. Okay, dang. I'm glad you made it. We've talked about this before, just personally, what it was like whenever you went home, and it's you're going through your recovery, trying to get healthy, and something kind of life-changing happened to you then. Can you fill us in on what was so God ordained, if you will, that that happened because of your injuries, and then getting to be at home in the States whenever you were?
Yeah, so like I said, I was wounded early in my deployment, so this was there end of February, beginning of March time frame. Month and a half, not even, probably a month and a half in country on the first deployment. So I spent right at a month in the hospital between Baghdad and Bethesda. And then I went home for a month on convalescent leave. So I went back to my parents' house in Texas. And after I went back to 29 Palms, I had some really good friends that were not in the military. And they actually came to Texas, and I bought a vehicle, and we all road tripped back to California. Well, one of my friends, Nate, had been in the Navy prior, and so he's like, hey, man, he said, you're on med hold, you're not doing anything. He's like, why don't you take some time off? We're going to go up to Humboldt and go to college, go to orientation. We're gonna go to college up in Humboldt, and we'll just make a road trip out of it and go up there and check everything out. So, after the road trip, on the way back down, we've got a wedding in San Francisco that we're going to go to. He said, my cousin's getting married in San Francisco, and, why don't you see if you can take the week off? And so, proved it through command. They were like, whatever, go. Not doing anything here anyways. Yeah. And so we take off. We go up. We have a great week and come back down and end up going to the wedding. Well, I don't have anything to wear other than my dress blues, which I had just gotten out of storage from packing all my stuff away for deployment.
Right.
And so I'm like, no suits, nothing like that. I'm a Lance Corporal, and we don't wear suits and
sure,
other than uniforms. And so I've got my dress blues on, and they got permission for me to, got me a seat. It was early enough notification to go to the wedding, and they got me a seat at their table. And so we go to the wedding. It's very nice. It's at one of the big Catholic cathedrals on the campus in San Francisco, and we go to the dinner afterwards, and a priest walks up to me, and he says,
"You're still in your dress blues."
I'm still in my dress blues. Yeah, okay. I hadn't gone and changed it. He comes up to me out of the blue, no earthly idea. Still to this day, have not figured out why. Okay. But he goes, "Is there anyone here that you would like to talk to?" And I said, any lady here that you'd like to? And I was like, no, I'm like, it was struck me kind of odd, and I was like, no, I'm okay. I can handle that on my own if I need to. and so
this priest is playing matchmaker over here for you. You don't even know him.
No earthly idea. So he, we talked for a second, and he walks off, and probably, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, whatever, the priest, I see him, he's walking around mingling with everybody, and I see him walking across, and he has this lady with him, and don't think twice about it. And he walks right up to the table and tells her, he said, "I'm sorry, I'm too old to dance with you, but he would be perfect for you." And so we're both, like, neither one of us have a clue what's happening. And so I'm like, okay, so would you like to dance? And so we start dancing, and we, we end up talking through the night. We hit it off really well, and that subsequently became my wife, Laura. And we have been together for 15 years. Been married for 10. Yeah. And if I would not have been wounded, and I always joke that, God almost had to kill me to make me meet my wife. So he said, no, I think we're going to cut this deployment short so that you can finish the rest of your life happy. So.
And that's a great story. So, the things, people often talk about, if you could go back and change things, would you, or what would you do different? Sounds to me like you probably wouldn't change too much, huh?
No, I would absolutely not change a thing. It was, I always tell people that some of the worst days, or what you perceive to be the worst days of your life, tend to, in the end, work out for the better, because you've got to have struggle to appreciate things.
Oh my God!
And if you don't have that struggle in life and everything's just kind of even, then you don't appreciate things as much as you do if you almost died and my wife and I enjoy doing a lot of things that our family's like, do you really want to go like scuba diving in the middle of the Caribbean and like there's sharks and all this other stuff? But but we enjoy doing that kind of things. Our friends are always like, where are y'all going next? What are y'all doing? Y'all are going here. enjoy spending time together. We enjoy doing a lot of the same things, and we like to travel. We like to see things and do things, and
well, it's interesting.
Try new things.
A lot of people talk about things happen for a reason, or the hindsight 2020 type stuff, and I don't necessarily believe that everything happens for a reason. I could do a whole talk on my thoughts on how that stuff happens. But this whole idea of post-traumatic growth, of a lot of people that might have been in that scenario with you, just they become like Eeyore and just poor me, and they get this gloomy attitude. And there's a place for that at a time and in a season, but people sometimes just get stuck there, and they can complain forever about the hand that they were dealt, instead of doing the best that they can with it. And here you were nearly killed, and if you hadn't been, you would have never met your wife. You guys wouldn't have this wonderful life together. And I think that just what captures me and I find so interesting is that your positivity, not just around that experience, but all of your life. It's sometimes I think maybe people who had a near-death experience are more eager to capitalize on this opportunity of a second chance or another life, or make the most of it. And it sounds like maybe you are, without even making a big deal about it, but you're just, hey, I've been blessed with this second chance. I've got this life, and I want to make the most of it. And it sounds like that's kind of the way you're living your life. I've heard from a few people that I read and watch their podcast. Ed Milet specifically says a lot of times that things don't happen to you; they happen for you. You just have to look for those things. And it sounds like that you're saying the same thing. It's it's not just the cliches of find the silver lining and stuff, but there are opportunities that lie in these struggles, and that's exactly what we talk about with post-traumatic growth. Is what can we take from this, and how can it how can it enrich our lives or make our lives even better? So last couple of things I want to talk about is how much you volunteer and give to other people, both mostly I would say probably in the veteran community. You want to do a lot, you want to give back, and you want to help, but you're involved in a couple of really wonderful organizations. You participate a lot with Impact a Hero. You participate with Warrior Benefit. You have tons of activities and things. Where did that come from? Why is that important to you? How does that fit into your life? Share a little bit about that.
All of my volunteerism came from, I would say, my mom and dad.
Yeah.
They have always been very active in the community, very active in the church, very active, just with Love Inc., with a lot of different, throughout their lives, different things. They go on missions, they do a lot of things like that, and I've always been a caring, giving person. My mom always used to joke that I would give away my last dollar and be broke because I didn't care about money. Yeah. And Laurel's changed that a little bit. I think a lot of that came from my family. Yeah. And when you're passionate about something and you get involved with it, it's good to give back when you can.
Well, a lot of people think that to be a leader, you have to be the one out front or giving orders or something. But I see this servant leadership in you. And it's one of the reasons that I missed this in your introduction, that you were inducted into the Impact a Hero Hall of Fame in 2017. And many of the reasons for that was because of not just your successful transition from military to civilian life, but how much you give to other people in a way of your talents and your resources and your time. And I just want to say thank you for that. And I know there's so many people that really appreciate what you do to help make a difference in this community of veterans that we have here, especially in Houston. Yeah. We've already covered the it sounds like you wouldn't change anything if you could. What advice would you give to someone else? I know we talked a little about the trying to find the positive stuff, but what else do you got? If you want to, if somebody was struggling and maybe kind of lost some hope, what advice would you give them?
Well, it kind of goes back to the positive. Is your life is you're going to get out of your life what you put into it. And if you're constantly negative and you're constantly down on yourself or down on the situation and you don't do anything positive to change it, your life is going to stay negative and stay down. And if you look for, even just start out with a little inkling of, oh, hey, I got this, let's work on that, and start building yourself up and become positive, you're going to be so much more rewarded. You're going to be, your attitude, people are going to want to be around you, want to do stuff with you, want to, help you help yourself. If you're always negative, you stay locked up in your room, you stay secluded, you don't reach out to people, you don't, when you're having struggles, that's really what I can say is just the attitude, and find some little positive thing. I was talking with another veteran one time that does acting and things like that, and he actually was in a couple of Hollywood movies and things like that. And one of the things he wanted to do, and it kind of struck me as funny, not funny what he wanted to do, but funny as a perspective I never looked at, was he wanted to start teaching acting classes. He said because it forces you to go through wide ranges of emotion, whether it's fake or real, whether you've got to do this scene where you're just crying and bawling and, whether it's fake for a movie or acting or whatever, or you're forced to be happy in a situation that's contagious. So it kind of helps you work through your emotions, work through, the hard times, the good times, and you learn, even if you're faking being happy, you're eventually going to be happy because you're
absolutely,
because you're acting being happy. You're eventually going to get to that point where this is a lot better than just being all doom and gloom.
Your physiology can change your psychology.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying you can fake the funk, but in some ways you can trick your subconscious mind to think that you're doing better than you are with the things that you tell yourself, and even just the way that you carry yourself. So I think that's awesome advice.
And once you trick yourself, then you're really doing better than you were.
You're really doing better. That's good stuff. Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know our audience really appreciates it. And once again, everybody, I just want you to, if you're at all interested in learning more about Impact to Hero, go to our website, impactttohero.org. You can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram. You can learn more about our mentorship development program. You can participate in our Veterans Voice Toastmasters group. You can check books out of our library, or even just follow along on your own. We have little bookmarks here that have our top 10 most recommended books that a lot of our veterans and even our non-veterans, our supporters, are reading just to help change their life. And it's making a real impact, and that's all designed by choice. So look for the positives, just as Jack was talking about, and I sure hope that you choose growth. Thank you so much, and see you next time.